Hi, so the title of this video is What Andrew Yang Won't Tell You and Why His Policies Are Revolutionary and Necessary. Um, I know that title sounds like a clickbait and very sensational type title, but I don't know if you know me that well, but based on just the way I speak, you can pretty much tell that I'm not really a sensationalist type. Um, so, so that title is actually pretty accurate to what this video is about, and it's something that I don't see anyone else talking about, and I don't really anticipate anyone else discussing. So I figured I'd bring it up. So in Andrew Yang's epic 10-hour Q&A session on Friday, he he mentioned how he ended up deciding to run for president, and then he also talked about this idea of market utility as a measurement of human value, and that's something I want to discuss in this video. So I'm just going to play two clips that have to do with that. After the video, I'm going to tell you what Andrew Yang won't tell you.
This was from, I believe Tiffany said, what was the moment you knew you were running for president?
So the backdrop to this is I spent 7 years running a nonprofit that I'd founded, Venture for America, that helped create thousands of jobs in cities around the country. That sounds very boilerplate-ish. But as part of that time, I was reading books on the future of work, and I read a book by a guy named Andy Stern called Raising the Floor. And he was the most powerful, prominent labor leader of his time. He was the head of the SEIU, which I think is still maybe the biggest union in the country. And so he said, the future of labor is no labor. We're kind of screwed, and we need to have a foundation for all Americans of $1,000 a month. Wrote this book in 2015. I read it sometime like a couple of years afterwards, because I was always trying to consume any information on the future work. And I was really struck by this, because I was like, okay, this is not a techie saying like, hey, we're going to automate away all the jobs, which, like techies, you're like, well, you would naturally think that. But this is someone who championed labor for decades, and he said, hey, we're kind of doomed. We need to do something bigger and more fundamental and more dramatic. And so I said, okay, if it's not a techie, if it's actually the labor leader saying this, then you really should listen. And at the end of his book, he says someone needs to run for president on universal basic income. And so I obviously, remembered that. And when I was thinking about running for president, I had lunch with Andy Stern here in New York in 2017. And I went into the lunch saying, if he says to me, no one is going to run for president on universal basic income, then I will run for president on universal basic income. So if you ask Tiffany, the moment I knew I was going to run for president was at the end of that lunch, when I had lunch with Andy Stern. Was like, all right, Andy, if anyone's going to do this, you would know, because you're one of the champions of universal basic income, and you'd be one of the first people I'd call if I was going to run for president. And so he said, so I said, who's doing this? What's the energy level around it? What's the attention? Right. And he said, no one's doing anything. I think that was his direct quote, no one's doing anything. So I said, okay, I'm somebody and I'll do something. And that's when I knew I was going to run for president. So that was spring 2017. So this is like the general approach to this question, and it's not just used for people on the spectrum. It's used for like everyone under the sun, pretty much. It's like you're not doing it right, because like if these people were put in the right environment, then they would like have these massive market impacts, positive market impacts. And there's some truth to that, because it is true, but we have to face facts. That's true for like a subset of these people. Like some of the people on the spectrum we're talking about are like nonverbal and will just need lifelong support their entire lives. So if you just go around saying like, hey, we
got a job for you.
Yeah, we got a job for you. We got these better things. Like, I mean, of course, like, we should be trying to create opportunities for people with very diverse capabilities and neurological profiles. But like arguing, essentially, the thing that drives me nuts about it is that what like the first tack does is it essentially says we all subscribe to the market utility measurement of human value. Is like if you're a trucker and now your truck driving skills have no value in the market because your truck's driven by robots, we should make you a coder or something that does have market value. Like, and because if you don't have economic value, you have no value.
Right.
And then if you take a group of people, like people on the spectrum being like they have economic value, it's like you should just be like, it doesn't matter if they have economic value. They have human value. They're human beings. There are children. There are fellow citizens and Americans. Like if like AI presidential candidate came out behind me and was like, hey, turns out I'm better than Andrew at everything, like, does that mean I should just like go and be like, well, it's over for me, I should just like just jump out a window now? Like, of course not. And so like it's somewhat frustrating to when people are trying to sell it as if it's like you just haven't plugged into their market contribution potential. It's like, well, yes, we should be doing everything we can to like help people find fruitful opportunities, but we should also say, look, the market is not the end all be all determinant of who has value and who doesn't. Like, and one of the points I'm making on the trail, which is very, much in this conversation, is like, what does the market value Evelyn's work at with our boys? 0, and like, and we all know that's nonsense. And so if you look up and say like the market is a highly imperfect determinant of what has value, the market will systematically undervalue parenting, nurturing, volunteerism, arts, creativity, most forms of journalism. Sorry, journalists, but like now, like it's heading in a nasty direction. Women and underrepresented minorities in many, many contexts. And so if you look at this and say, okay, some of these things are literally the most important things in our lives. Yeah, like relationships, like altruism, like anything that you think of as like the stuff of human existence. And this actually is the great tension that's tearing our country apart, is that we've all gotten brainwashed into this like market mentality. It's like, essentially your fault, adapt or die, brand yourself, like keep on hustling, like this thing. And then the market is like progressively zeroing out parenting. It's like, oh, I guess I'll never have a kid. Helping others, like most forms of arts and creativity, a lot of people with various neurological profiles. And so this is like the great schism. And one of the big themes of my campaign is like, look, the market sometimes gets things terribly, terribly wrong. If we follow it too long, we are screwed.
Right.
And we need to try and get the market aligned over here. Or in some cases, just ignore the market. Just be like, hey, you know what? Like, we're the richest society in the history of the world, 21 trillion or so in GDP, like up 5 or 6 trillion in the last 12 years, like easily afford $1,000 dividend for every American adult. And then people will be like, oh, what have they done to deserve that? It's like, they're an American owner and shareholder of the greatest country in the history of the world. Like, this is a starting foundation. And then that alone gets you thinking differently about how to address even folks in like the special needs community. It's not like, oh, I'm going to like find some way for you to become like some savant, like, order. It's like, hey, guess what? Like, human being has value. Like, what's that? You like, someone who's going to need service the rest of their life? Great. Like, instead of being like, oh, that's like a drain in our society. That's like the point of our society. So it's like, well, what's that? Need some services? Like, fantastic. There are probably like dozens of people that actually want to provide those services if they could make any kind of living doing so. So let's like make that possible.
So as you can see in that clip, Andrew has a pretty deep interest and also understanding of the labor markets. He read that book, Raising the Floor by Andy Stern, who is a very powerful and well-respected labor union leader. So as Andrew Yang mentioned, the conclusion from that book is that the future of labor is no labor. So that's just totally shocking, coming from a labor leader to say the future of labor is no labor. Also, he mentioned that Andy Stern recommended this 1K a month UBI as being necessary for the future. And then later on in that clip I played you, Andrew said that we all subscribe to the market utility measurement of human value. Let me repeat that again. We all subscribe to the market utility measurement of human value. Essentially what Andrew Yang is saying is that as a society, we value humans to the extent that they are able to do work that gets paid. So the example that Andrew Yang gives is that if you're a trucker and your job gets automated away, then the solution in this paradigm is to retrain you so that you can be a coder or be someone else with, or something else that has market value. Because in this paradigm, if you don't have economic value, then you have no value at all. And this is something that's really important to understand, this idea that if you don't have economic value, then you have no value at all. And to really kind of see that that's basically how our society is set up right now and has been for a while. What Andrew Yang wants to do is completely, he says unbrainwash us. He said this in a number of other occasions as well. Unbrainwash us of this idea that you only have economic value or you have no value at all. And the reason why this is so important is because automation and AI, artificial intelligence, will displace so many different jobs in so many different industries, that many people in the future will be left without jobs. Under our current framework, those who don't have market utility are the people who suffer, they're the people who are homeless. Right now, as a society, we are pretty much okay with this because unemployment is still relatively low. But what if 50% of jobs are gone? I know that's a crazy high number. I'm just using that as a simple illustration. So under this same framework that we as a society currently operate in, that means we have 50% of people are going to be homeless. And if that were to happen, then there would just be chaos everywhere. And so that's why it's so important for Andrew Yang to change this paradigm. None of the other candidates are aware of this. All of the other candidates are working under this paradigm that you only have value if you have market utility. For example, Bernie Sanders is trying to create the jobs. So that's what his whole idea of jobs for all. It's about creating the jobs. And Elizabeth Warren is trying to find the jobs. So she's kind of blaming trade deals, blaming poor trade deals, and she promises to renegotiate trade deals so that we can bring the jobs back. Both are working under the same paradigm that people only have value if they have market value. They're still stuck in that paradigm. What Andrew Yang is trying to do is get us all out of this paradigm because he sees the writing on the wall and he sees this idea of creating jobs and finding jobs. In the bigger scheme of things, it's pretty much a futile exercise. And now you can kind of see why Andrew Yang won't explicitly state this, because if he did, it's a very sort of depressing message. And on top of that, I think he would probably be labeled as insane. So that's why I'm doing it in this video, because who cares if people call me insane, right? So because Andrew Yang doesn't explicitly state this, and he never will explicitly state this, it's something you really need to connect the dots to really understand the things that Andrew Yang will probably never tell you. I'm willing to bet that he doesn't even tell people in his campaign, probably maybe just a few people in his campaign if he does. Because the reality is that in the future, AI and automation will take away a huge number of jobs. Might not be 50%, but maybe it will be 50% eventually. No one really knows, but it's going to be a big number. It's going to be a number that's so big that we can't sustain it as a society and still work under the same framework or paradigm that we're working under, this paradigm of valuing humans as only having value if they have economic value. So if 50% of jobs are displaced, then basically under this framework, 50% of the people won't have market utility. So as you can see, that is not a sustainable paradigm. Because it's not a sustainable paradigm, we need to change that paradigm, and that's what Andrew Yang is trying to do. He's trying to essentially unbrainwash us as a society to not only see people as having economic value. And the Freedom Dividend is actually the first step to get us to undergo this unbrainwashing process. Yes, the Freedom Dividend serves as a floor, it serves as a safety net, all of that, I understand. But what Yang will never talk about explicitly is that the idea behind the Freedom Dividend is actually to unbrainwash us from this framework that humans only have value if they have economic value. Because with the Freedom Dividend, it's a right of citizenship, meaning that you don't have to do anything for it. You get it simply because you're a citizen, simply because, but it's even more, he says, as a right of citizenship, but it's actually even more than that. It's even deeper than that. What he's trying to get people to understand, even on a subconscious level, is that you're getting this money because you're a human being. You don't have to do anything for it. So the deeper idea behind the Freedom Dividend is that he's actually trying to disconnect market utility from human value. And this whole unbrainwashing process is going to take a long time. And the Freedom Dividend is actually just the first step. The idea is that over time, more and more people start undergoing this unbrainwashing process, and then eventually we reach a point where society as a whole changes the paradigm, changes away from valuing humans as solely having economic value to valuing humans as just having inherent value because we are human beings. And that's what's actually at the core of Yang's humanity first or human-centered capitalism. Let me give you a potential future scenario that's going to sound really crazy under Andrew Yang's human-centered capitalism. So what could possibly happen is that AI and automation gets to a point where it's so productive and so efficient that AI and automation is providing the majority of economic utility for us as a society. And as this happens, the Freedom Dividend continues to accelerate to the point where everybody's getting paid and they don't need to actually do work to survive. So under this utopian scenario, the people who are working are the ones who find meaning in their work. So as I mentioned, the Freedom Dividend is the first step. There's so many other things that Yang is trying to do to get us out of this paradigm. One big one, I think, is changing the way we measure GDP, or essentially doing away with GDP and replacing it with a scorecard that has GDP but also has other measurements of well-being. For example, childhood success rates, mental health, but then he also has things like design and aesthetics. So it's just this really long list of all the different factors that could be added to the scorecard And the whole idea behind this is, again, to get us away from just measuring our well-being as a society based purely on, money, to put it bluntly, and measure it based on other factors that lie outside of money. So there's another part of the unbrainwashing process. So you got the dividend, you got the freedom dividend, you got the scorecard. So it's all trying to get us to this new paradigm in which we, again, disconnect market utility from human value. And that is really Andrew Yang's big and revolutionary idea. And the reason why it's necessary is that automation is coming, AI is coming, and that's why people like Elon Musk, they were the first support. He was one of the first supporters of Andrew Yang, because he sees this future coming, because he's one of the people at the forefront of automation, AI, and all of that. So he really sees this future coming. I know I haven't managed to explain this very clearly, because it'll probably take a long sort of discussion back and forth to really drive home this idea. But I hope I've given you a taste of what Andrew Yang's vision, what Andrew Yang's real vision is, the vision that he's never going to tell you. And I hope you can see why that vision is necessary, and why I feel so strongly that he's the exact leader that we need at this exact time. Because he's the only candidate who truly understands the challenges facing society with the development of AI and automation. I mean, you got Elizabeth Warren still doubting the fact that AI has much of an effect on jobs. She calls it a good story, but not true. So she has no clue what's going on. I hate to put it that way, but a lot of the candidates don't have a clue what's going on. Andrew Yang is really the only one who truly understands this. He's been sort of fixated on labor for probably a decade now, and he started a nonprofit, Venture for America, in 2011, and the aim of Venture for America is to encourage top graduates to go into entrepreneurship in areas like the Rust Belt and other struggling cities in order to create jobs. So he's pretty much steeped in labor and jobs and all that. So he understands all of this on a deep level that none of the candidates do. All of the other candidates are still stuck in a 20th century paradigm. They have no clue about artificial intelligence and automation and how that is going to transform society. You got Bernie Sanders, and he's still talking about federal jobs guarantee. Federal jobs guarantee was tried in China, places like China, and it didn't work. The only place federal jobs guarantee is working is in North Korea. And then you got Elizabeth Warren talking about NAFTA and all of that. All of those, I'm not saying that that does not have an effect. It certainly does, most certainly does. But I'm saying that you can't ignore automation and AI, and in the future, automation and AI is going to have a significantly bigger impact on jobs and jobs than trade deals ever will. Because automation is going to affect the entire world. It's not just going to affect different parts of the world. It's going to affect everybody. So what some of you might be thinking right about now is that, okay, I'm willing to accept your premise that AI is coming, automation is coming, but that's not going to happen until 50 years from now. So why do we need Andrew Yang now? My answer to that is twofold. One is that it takes a long time to change mindset, to change this framework that we've been operating under for probably hundreds of years. It's going to take a long time to unbrainwash society as a whole out of this paradigm of seeing people as solely having value if they have economic value. That's going to take a long time to really unravel. So that's one. The other is that Yang is a candidate who understands this on a deep level and has the plans to start solving this issue now. And are you willing to roll the dice and see if, maybe in the next several election cycles, someone comes along that has this same level of understanding and also the willingness and courage to do something about it? And that's definitely a bet we should not make as a society. Anyway, hope that wasn't too convoluted. Again, it's a very difficult subject to discuss. I hope I made a little bit of sense. I'm curious to see what you think and how much you got out of what I was trying to communicate, if I was making any sense at all. Anyway, comment below, thumbs up, subscribe, share, all that good stuff, and I will talk to you later. Bye.